Hey everybody, St. Paul here, and welcome to Music on the Run. This episode features one of the originators of the Minneapolis sound. Cymone is next on Music on the Run.
Before we get started here, do me a favor. Wherever you got this podcast, make sure you subscribe, give us a rating, and if you have time and you like what you're hearing, make sure you write a review. It really helps us get the word out so we can have a lot more people coming to the party.
Hey everybody, I'm St. Paul Peterson. Prince gave me that nickname, and I've been lucky enough to tour with people like the Steve Miller Band, Kenny Loggins, Peter Frampton, Donny Osmond, to name a few. And when I'm not playing music, I love to run. And this is a podcast about how we stay healthy on the road, physically, mentally, and with our families. Welcome to Music on the Run. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 21. I can't believe it. A Music on the Run, another interview from my basement. I grew up down here. This is the Peterson family rehearsal hall, if you will. Fun to be broadcasting from such an important place to me. You know, I've been looking forward to this interview for a little while now. We had it scheduled earlier and something happened, and we have rescheduled for this moment. And actually, I'm a little nervous because this guy is an icon, a Minneapolis icon. He is a bass icon. He is a great musician, a writer, a producer, an artist, an activist whose long career started in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He's one of the originators of the Minneapolis sound. Please welcome my brother in bass guitar, Cymone. Andre, man, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
We have a long history, you and me.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah,
beautiful history.
Yeah, and it's funny because it didn't start in the 80s because you were gone by the time I got in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. We'll talk about this, but you and I started in our relationship in the 90s in a band that we were actually in, and we're finally going to see that record come out, which is
exactly
cool.
Finally. Yeah, it's going to be cool.
So where are we finding you right now? Where are you, man? I mean, during COVID, where you been?
You know, I'm in California. I'm in Los Angeles. My family really won't let me move around much. they're like, you know, I'm kind of hermetically sealed in our little compound here. But I've been getting out lately. So, you know, we went for a nice long drive with the Malibu, which was beautiful. But otherwise they're like, no, you can't, you know, this is pandemic. We don't want anything happening to you. So they're very, very protective, which is beautiful, but it's driving me mad. So yeah. I can't lie. It's driving me crazy.
Well, you and I saw each other in, what was that, January?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went out and had coffee, right? Literally, like, I think that's about 3 or 4 blocks from where I live.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot has happened since then, man.
Yeah, I haven't been, you know what? That was the last time I was at that coffee shop. That was the last time. Yeah, which is sad because I used to go there pretty much, you know, 2-3 times. Well, at least 2-3 times a week. So, yeah.
You family safe, Catherine, the kids, everybody?
Yeah, everybody's good. Actually, everybody's real good. So, yeah, I can't complain. I'm loving life.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good, man. Well, I'm glad that you had found time to come on and do this because there's so many people who are looking forward to this, including me. And I'm not kidding, man. I was like, God, I get to interview one of the originators. So first of all, you grew up here, right? And we got something in common. We're both the youngest. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So what's it like being the youngest Anderson kid?
You know, you probably can attest to this because a lot of people, I don't think, understand the dynamic of the youngest. Because, you know, for everything that's not so great, there's a lot of things that are really super cool. Because, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, you get all the ribbing and all the, you know, big brothers and all the, you know, the thumping upside the head and all that kind of stuff and all the sort of lessons and all of that. But you also get the benefit of independence. Because I think, you know, for me and the you know, the amount of time between my older siblings and the younger siblings, I don't want to say they let me play on the freeway or they let me, bathe in the creek or anything like that, even though they did. But they were like, with my older siblings, they were like, oh, and so we got babies, and they followed them around and they took pictures of them and everything. By the time they got to me, which is number 6, they're like, they don't need to take pictures.
Oh,
we already did that.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
The pictures stop, the videos stop, and it's like, whatever. Another one.
Yeah, exactly. Another one. And so I don't think there are any pictures of me when I was, I think under 3, maybe. I think there's only 1 or 2 of them when I was like under 3. So there's that. And then there's the benefit of learning from your older siblings, seeing them do all kinds of crazy stuff and going, I ain't gonna do that, I ain't gonna do that, I ain't gonna do that, and I'm not gonna do that. So you learn all of that kind of stuff. And then there's the bonus. And that's the fact that when you're the youngest, and if you're lucky enough, and I'm sure you are because you're from a musical family. My family is not as musical as yours, but I have a couple of siblings that are in music. But the beauty is all of my siblings were very, very into music. So I had the benefit of a very eclectic music collection. So that I think really kind of, made my appreciation for a lot of different kinds of music to be, as broad as it is.
What was playing around that household?
You name it. I mean, starting from jazz, obviously my dad was a musician. So
cool.
Yeah, no, he was a musician. He was a bass player. And so he was really into jazz. So you got, everything from Duke Ellington to, to Charlie Parker, to Mingus, you name it, was his whole thing. Lou Rawls, he was into Lou Rawls.
And I played golf with Lou Rawls once.
Oh, I'm jealous.
At a little Whitsett, at that little Whitsett golf course out in Cali, man. I got to play with Lou. Anyway, sorry.
Man, I'm jealous because, I did get to meet him once at a telethon or something right on Sunset. He used to do these telethons. But I don't know why I was involved, but I was involved in that years and years ago. But I still to this day love, there's an album called Lou Rawls Soulin'. It's an amazing album. I mean, because I love big band. That's my dream. One of the things that I do in my spare time is I create music. I mean, I'm a musician and I'm an artist, but I create music. I've done albums, big band albums that people have never heard. Ooh. I've done classical albums people have never heard. I just
bust that stuff out, man. What the hell are you waiting for?
I know.
Come on.
Well, it's just, there's only so much time. There's only so much you can really get behind. And, and for me, I'm always creating and I'm always trying to create different styles and different sounds. And that's what I do. It's always been what I've done. So, but, so what else? I mean, my mom was into pretty hardcore, blues. She listened to everybody from Rudy Ray Moore to Mom's Mabley, to Millie Jackson. So around our house, my mom was listening to some, Gut Bucket, down and down, Snatch and the Poo-Tangs. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but my mom was in
but I will be when we're done with his interview.
You should. I mean, because
I need to write this down. Hold on, scribe.
No, that's the kind of stuff that was bumping in the Anderson crib. And then, then obviously my sisters were into Motown and all of that. And then my brothers were into Funkadelic. And one of my other brothers was into, Laura Nyro and the Beatles and, and the Rolling Stones. And so, again, like I said, I was lucky because I was the beneficiary of, all of that music. And I was an absolute sponge. And I think for me, I wanted to know not just how, the music was created, but I wanted to understand everything about it. I literally couldn't understand I wanted to know how the music was coming out of the speakers. Oh. So I got in big trouble one day because I took our little stereo, it was a big stereo console. Yeah. I took it apart. Completely took it apart. I was like, I'm figuring this shit out. and I took it apart and I tried to figure out how it worked.
Your sister, I think. Your sister's listening
My sisters, yeah, they listen to all kinds of stuff, Motown and, Smokey Robinson and the Temptations. In fact, my brother listened to Temptations too, because he was in a group back in the day. He was in a singing group. So yeah, I mean, it's I have a very colorful background when it comes to Minneapolis, and it's been a beautiful experience. I think growing up where I grew up and how I grew up was a very, very beautiful experience.
Wow. Funny how we can look back on that now that we got a little salt and pepper going on here, and we look back and go, man, I remember as a kid hating some certain things, but I look back and I go, man, that molded me into who I am now. So that was a necessary journey for me to take. And I'm sure you can agree with that. We, whether it's getting in trouble or playing in bands that you don't know, why am I here? But it gets you down the road on your journey. So when do you pick up an instrument? When does that happen?
It happens right around that same time. I think I wrote my first song probably about 3 or 4, something like that. I was really super young.
What?
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I was like, because
did your dad take you to the studio and cut it then?
Oh, no. My dad didn't want me to have anything. Wouldn't that be great? My dad didn't want me to have anything to do with music. No, it was, I didn't even realize, because nobody told me how it works or anything like that. But I just would hear melodies, and I would always hear melodies, and I would hear this melody and I would sing it, and I would sing it to myself, and then I wrote it down. And I still remember the song. It was a song called Zacco McCracko. Crazy little tune. But I wrote it down, and I wrote the melody, and I would sing it all the time, and I would tell everybody, I wrote a song, and my mom was like, Andre, are you sure you did? I was like, yeah, you want to hear it? And she's like, what? And I would sing it, and so that became, a thing for me, and I would just write songs. I wrote another song, because when I would hear all these songs on the records that, I play on the stereo, I'd go, well, I want to write a song like that. I want to create something. So melodies would always be in my head. So I would just, back when I was a kid, I must have wrote a slew of them. I don't even remember. I lost count, because I would just come up with all of these little tunes in my head. And, that became a thing, and I mean, that, and then my father was, like I said, was a bass player. Right. So he had an upright bass that always sat in our hallway. And so when he was gone, because he worked at the post office, when he would be at work, I'd go and, either when I came home from school or as soon as he'd leave, I'd jump up on a stool, put on a record, and would learn literally everything in the collection. I learned everything from jazz. The Beatles stuff was like, to me, I thought that was cool. And James Brown, literally, I learned every James Brown record that we had, which was
on the upright.
On the upright. Even James Brown Live, all that stuff on the upright, all of it. I mean, and so when it came time, and when it came time to be in a band, because I wasn't the bass player originally.
What were you?
Horn player. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I played saxophone, trumpet, trombone, tuba.
You gotta be kidding. See, now these are things I don't know about you, man. I know you a long time. I guess I never asked.
Yeah, no, I was literally our horn section. And so they were surprised when the bass player that we had wasn't cutting it. And I was like, he was playing something. And I was like, don't go like that. He said, what do you mean? Like you can, I was like, as a matter of fact, I was like, and they were like, everybody was like, what? I didn't know you could. I was like, I just, sometimes you think people, just like you thought you think you know things. You think people know more about you than they do, because, you just, yourself so well. You think that other people know you, but they don't. But, know. And so I was able to, pick up the bass and just play everything, because by that point, bass was, I had kind of had it figured it out.
Who's that first band? What's the name of that first band?
First band Well, we had a few different names, but it eventually became Grand Central.
It did?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's where all this started, right?
That's where it all started. Yep. That's where it all began.
Did I read in an interview that your mom was your manager? Is that right?
No.
I read that somewhere. I'm gonna report Wikipedia then.
No, Morris's mom was our manager.
Morris's mom. Okay, I must have read that.
Yeah, Morris's mom was our manager. My mom, you would think, was our manager because she got us a lot of gigs, and she was very instrumental in us playing some gigs that were sometimes questionable.
Oh, is that right? Do tell.
Yeah, but
such as
backyard barbecue parties.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
those are back in fashion, by the way. That's the only gigs in town right now.
They kind of are. Well, back then they were in fashion for a whole different series of reasons. But
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but now that's a whole different thing. But yeah, no, I mean, she would, she would just tell you what you were going to do, which is, it's kind of interesting when you think about it in retrospect. For everybody that becomes, famous and known for all around the world, and that my mom just is going to tell you you're going to do this gig at Fanny's house, and that's just the way that one's going. Fanny's having a book club meeting, and you guys are going to play, so make sure you're there by 2.
Don't mess with mom.
Bring all the stuff. We'll find a place for you to plug in.
Perfect.
That's the itinerary.
That's perfect. So she was your booking agent. Okay, well, I'm not too far off.
There you go. She was our booking agent. There you go.
There we go.
No, classic.
So who was in? Okay, let's just talk briefly about the history of Grand Central, because really, that's the origination of the Minneapolis Sun. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. You're very much right. The original, because I'm not going to go back to the original, because the original is a whole another set of circumstances. Okay. But what it broke down to is me, Prince, and his cousin Charles, my sister Linda, William Dowdy, and Terry Jackson, and then as we did a few gigs, and then we had a couple of issues with some of the band members, and so we had to make some changes. And I met Morris and got Morris had been trying to get into the band. He kept telling me that he was
Morris
really
Day, so we're speaking of, right?
Right, Morris Day. Okay. Yeah, he kept telling me he's a really good drummer, and he was so great. And I tried to explain to him we already got a drummer, even though we were having issues at the time. But I said, we got a drummer. He's like, well, I'm better than your drummer. I was like, oh, are you? He was like, oh, really? Yeah, you got to come hear me play. And he kept sweating me until finally, I wound up in, because Morris is a grade ahead of me. I think he's either a year or 2 years ahead of me. So when I left Lincoln and went to the Old North, Morris was already going there, and he had full access to me then. And so he was just sweating me like, dude, you got to come hear me. Yeah, you got to come hear me play. And so he trapped me in the hallway and finally got me to come to his crib. And I heard him play. And after I heard him play, I was like, okay, you're in. I got to get you to come and meet the rest of the guys, so he brought his drums over to, at the time we were rehearsing at Terry Jackson's down his basement. And I had him bring his drums down there and had Prince come down and Linda and William and had them jam. And they saw what I saw, and they were like, okay. And then, unfortunately, Charles came as we were having our little jam session. He was like, what's going on?
Oh, he walked into his demise, shall we say.
Yeah, so that was how that one went. But yeah, but that was the band, and then it became, Grand Central, and it was, then it was me, Morris, Prince, my sister Linda, William Dowdy, and Terry Jackson for a while.
So you really were right in the mix of that. Do you own that? I mean, do you feel you got enough credit for that, or isn't that what it's about?
It's not been what it's about. I mean, the thing is, I have to speak about it now, because now that Prince is gone, people are beginning to try to reinvent the wheel. They're telling different stories, and and I can't allow that to happen because that's just not accurate. Yeah, it's just not, because the thing about it is the reality is beautiful. Regardless, and everybody has their own perspective, but it is what it is. And there's no reason for anybody to try to, because people have been saying, oh, well, Prince was going to move in with me in my house, and and he was going to do this and they was going to do that, and I started the band and all of this, and it's just nonsense. It's like, nobody was saying any of this stuff when Prince was alive.
Of course.
And the reality is, I've been saying the same thing, whether I ad nauseum. I stopped doing interviews in 1985, I think, and I didn't start doing it until 2014 when I started making music again. But even back then, because you can, obviously, you can pull up any interview I ever did. I always said the same thing, because it is what it is.
Because it's the truth?
Yeah, because it's the truth.
It's easy to remember if it's the truth, right?
Yeah. I got into a thing once I was doing, and it's actually really comical. I got into it, and I did an interview with a guy named Nate Morris in Detroit. And he had a dance show, and I was on there. My record company got me to go and promote one of the, I think when I was either doing Kelly's Eyes or one of those songs. But I went there to promote it. And as he was interviewing me, he was asking me about, how I started. And I said, I started, a band back in the day, and Prince was in it. He said, Prince? I said, yeah. Prince was in your band? I was like, yeah. And he said, oh, and he made a joke. He said, oh, Prince was in his band. I was like, yeah. He said, well, who else was in your band? I said, well, my sister was in my band, and Morris. I said, yeah, Morris Day? Morris Day. Oh, listen, he says Morris Day was in his band. So Morris Day was, I'm like, and now I'm insulted.
Right, of course.
So I'm like, like, and so, when you ask about, taking credit, it's like, it's not about credit, but it just is what it is. It's like, I brought Morris into our band, period. And if anybody who knows anything about Prince, especially back then, he was a very quiet individual. He wouldn't, you couldn't shake, rattle, or roll 8-9 words out of him if you didn't really know him well. And back then, obviously once you become, famous and you have, managers and bodyguards and all that, then you can be whatever you want. But back then there was no managers, there was no bodyguards.
You're kids.
Yeah.
You're kids.
And he was just a very, very, he was an introvert. He didn't talk to very many people, and he and I had a lot in common. But me, on the other hand, had a big mouth, and I was.
Wait a minute. Let me imagine that. Hold on. Okay, I got it.
and so, I was very much, into let's do this, let's do that, we got to do it. So I was that guy. So we complimented each other,
You brought him along for the ride because you were the instigator, it sounds like.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite say I brought him along for the ride. That's a bit of a stretch, but I think we complimented each other in terms of, me being more outgoing.
No, I just simply meant that as a friendship thing. That's what we do for each other, though.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, man, let's go. I didn't mean it any other way. No.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. In that context, absolutely. And in some ways, literally brought him along for the ride. And when I say ride, it's like, in more ways than one.
Is that right?
But yeah, I was just, I came from a different, I moved into a community that he was already involved in, established in, and I didn't know anybody. I literally was a stranger and in a strange land, when I first moved from where I came from into that community. And he was the first person that I really kind of got to know. And so, he kind of, showed me who was who. And it was interesting to get his breakdown and to get into his mind, because it was interesting to, because I never had that before, to see how somebody else dealt with other young people. I mean, my way of dealing with people back then was very, I'd have to say sort of Cro-Magnon. It's like if somebody said something to you, hit them. with a blunt object, and he would try to break it down where, no, you don't want to hit him. He's got cousins, and he's got about 18 brothers and sisters, and you're going to have to hit them too.
Get the lay of the land from him, huh?
So yeah, he kind of broke it down. So, but it was interesting to get to know things from that standpoint. But yeah, no. So so I was like, he said he had a cousin, I had a sister, and I saw William playing, so I brought him in, and Terry was our neighbor. He was literally lived next door to me. So and he just wanted to be in the band, and so yeah, that's how Grand Central got kind of cobbled together.
Then, well, let's fast forward a few years, because we could stay on this subject for 3 hours, but I want to talk about you and some other things here. But you were obviously in Prince's band. You were the bass player until what year?
Till 81.
81. Okay. You left.
Yeah.
Why'd you leave?
For a number of reasons, but mostly because, I had said that, because I never wanted to be in somebody's band. I just never, I wanted to be in a band.
Sure.
In fact, I thought my dream was to be in like the dopest band on the planet. That's what I would always tell people, even before I met Prince. Anybody who'd listen to me, I was like, I'm gonna be in a band. It's gonna be the baddest band. We're gonna take down the Jackson 5, and I would brag and all this kind of stuff. So I always wanted to be in a band, and so Grand Central became that band to a certain extent. But as things happened, Prince wound up getting a record deal.
Right.
And then he asked me if I would, if I would be in his band. And first I said no. And then he said, well, what if we do like a Brothers Johnson kind of thing? And I was like, no, they signed you to a solo artist deal. I said, so it wouldn't make sense for me to be, And he said, but you got to be in it. I said, look, I'll tell you what, I'll be in it. You're doing a 3-album deal. So for 3 albums, I'm there. I'm behind you. I got your back, and so that was basically it. And so after the 3rd album, which was Dirty Mind, that was my exit.
That was it.
And so, yeah, and it was, I got to tell you, it was a blast. For the most part, it was absolutely a blast.
You left on your terms. Then you left, and then you did your own thing.
I left on. I left on. Well, I left on my terms because I just was like, for one thing, that's when I said I was going to leave, and for another thing, there was issues with credit and songs and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, you know what, at this point, maybe it's just time for me, to move on.
So things got a little funny, and it was time to
sort of realize your own thing.
Yeah, I get it.
Things got a little funny. It was time to go. And, yeah.
Well, I respect you for that, man, because, look, you guys grew up together, and it wasn't exactly what you bargained for. You tell them that from the get-go. And then it was time to go. And then you went out and got your own record deal. Is that how those events unfolded?
Pretty much. I mean, I wound up, because obviously when I left, I had no money, $0. Right. So I was, and I just had a newborn daughter.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it was rough. And so I was like, but luckily supported my family. My brother bought me a 4-track, and I cut a demo, and I literally called, I looked and was kind of eeny, miny, mo. I was like, what labels? And I thought, well, Columbia sounds good. So I called him up and I said, listen, I'm Andre Cymone. I think I want to get a record deal with you guys. So, what do I have to do? And I literally, I kid you not, that's what I did.
You called from the Yellow Pages and called him on the phone?
Called him on the phone, said, I'm Andre Cymone and I should have a record deal with you guys. I looked at Warner Brothers and I thought about this and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, are you really Andre Cymone? Andre Cymone from, I said, yeah. And, they said, well, I'll tell you what, send us a demo tape and, we'll see, we'll work it out from there. I said, okay. So I cut the demo tape, sent it to them. And they was like, okay, well, do you have representation? I said, no. And I said, you know what? I said, yeah, So I called Owen. I said, Owen, listen, I got this thing worked out with Columbia. If you got, and so the rest is history. Owen, I had connections, and, he solidified the situation and got me an attorney, and the rest is history.
Was that a fun period of time for you creating those records? Did you enjoy that? Do you look back on that? Or was that, because people think that once you get the record deal, you've made it. That's it. But that ain't the case, as you and I both know.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's funny. Nobody's ever asked me a question like that before. I mean, I've been asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, I know.
Never that. Was it, in some ways it was fun. And in some ways it was a kind of a bit of a lonely process, which was interesting because, Prince and I had always done everything since we were in 7th grade together. We wrote songs together. We recorded songs together, our first demos and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of went back and forth, with developing our writing skills and all that kind of stuff. So, when I got a record deal, and I think it was $250,000 or something like that. And they were like, I'm from the projects, and like $250,000 is like, that's a lot of money. I ain't never had
anybody.
I ain't never smelt any kind of money like that in my life. So I'm like, so my attitude was like, well, I can do whatever I want. And as an artist, I wanted to create something that nobody had, ever done. And, it would have been easy for me to sort of replicate what was out at the time. Because I guess that's what I think that's what they expected me to do, which is understandable in retrospect, but yep. I just want to be an artist, and I looked at things from a very, very different perspective. And so, and I was very aware, as we talked earlier, I'm from a very musical background. Mm-hmm. And so I was aware of all the different music that was out there. I could have, I played horns. I played everything. I played drums. I played drums better than I played bass.
What?
So I played, oh yeah.
Good to know, by the way.
Yeah, no, I only, stopped playing drums when Morris got in the band, because Morris was so bad on drums.
Yeah.
I was like, well, there ain't no need for me, because at that point, because we used to have drum offs and who thought they could play best.
Sure.
And I was like, couldn't nobody hold a candle as far as I was concerned.
Right.
May not have been absolutely the case, but you couldn't have told me that I wasn't the baddest drummer in the band at that point.
I love that kind of confidence, man. I'm the baddest in the land.
No, that was the environment that we were in, because I had a drum set down in our basement, and
right.
Because my cousin was a drummer. He was a drummer in local bands and in Maurice McInnes's band and Midwest Express and bands that were really making noise around the city. So I had and he left a little drum set for me and my sister to play. So but anyway, so yeah, I just it just became I could have created whatever kind of music I wanted. Yep. And I just decided I wanted to be artistic and I wanted to do something that hadn't been done. So I did, the Living in a New Wave album, which, if you really think about it, I wasn't trying to write a hit, and I was just trying to create something absolutely new. Yeah. And so it was like, I think the timing is like 6/8 or something crazy like that. It's like, right. There's nothing like it. There still isn't anything like it.
Right.
And I think the songs on that album all represent that same attitude. And my focus at then was everything has to be futuristic and sort of in that headspace. And so the record company was like, but we want you to do something more like this. And they cut out the top 10 R&B. And I was like, but I don't want to do anything like that. Why do you want to put a mustache on my Mona Lisa? And so I was like, I was adamant about not wanting to do anything that they wanted me to do. And then I wanted to do rock and roll.
Right.
Because then I wanted, and so finally we wound up going back and forth. And I just wanted off and they wouldn't let me off. And so, and I literally went to to New York to the president's office and stood on the table. And because I heard that the best way to get off of labels, if you go stand on the table and you yell at the president of the company. So I went and stood on the table and I yelled at the president of the company, and they, said, well, that was good. You've got the lungs, but you're still signed to a contract.
Oh.
So I was like, all right, well, you know what? I'm not making any more records. So I stopped, and then I got broke again, and I was like, okay, well,
right.
I got to make some money. So maybe I met Jody, and I thought, you know what? She's got an amazing voice. Let me just work with her. I wrote some songs for her, and she liked them, and we fooled around and got a string of hits, and then she won a Grammy Award for Best New Artist.
Yeah.
And then wrote a bunch of.
There became your production career.
Yeah. Well, I started. The production I think began with. Began with Cymone, but then but Evelyn Champagne King, I did a song for her, which was I think it was called Face to Face, which was the name of her album.
Okay.
And I did half, and Leon Silvers did the other half, and there's a song.
Man, that's good company.
Yeah, it was very cool. I cut it at Sunset Sound, which is interesting because there was a song on her album called Let's Get Crazy.
No.
That
before the other one? Before the other similar.
It was before it, but it was at Sunset Sound, and I think he somehow thought that, and so I'm literally driving down Highway 100, right near 50th and French, near that Denny's.
Yep.
This purple BMW, comes honking, and pulls me over. So we pull over to the side of the freeway, and he's like, I just want you to know, I didn't steal your song. I didn't steal the title. Mine's called Let's Go Crazy, not Let's Get Crazy. I'm like, I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, good seeing you. I don't know what you're talking about, but cool. And then later I heard Let's Go Crazy. And I was like, now I see what he's talking about.
Oh,
yeah, man. Now I get it. Yeah, because, it was actually classic because we were in the studio and Owen was in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget this and it was the first time Owen had seen Prince in a long time because, they had split and,
Yep, I do know.
And, and Owen, I think Owen at the time was still managing me. I think, I'm not positive. It seems like it would make sense because that's the only reason why I would be at the studio. But I was working on Evelyn Champagne King's album, and we were in the studio, and then Prince came in, and maybe he came in when we were doing Let's Get Crazy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he came in and he saw Owen, and Owen looked, and the energy was just weird. And oddly enough, Owen's chair just flipped up, and Owen fell, and Prince was like, and he walked out of the studio. It was just the weirdest thing. And I was like, Sunset Sound, there was a few things at Sunset Sound that was kind of interesting that happened, I have to say.
Ghosts.
Yeah, it had some very interesting things. Yeah. Because, they had, I don't know if you knew this, but they had the masters of Hendrix and a bunch of different folks back then, because one of the engineers actually played one of Hendrix's masters and soloed. I think it was like Voodoo Child or something like that, and soloed stuff. And I was like, blew me away.
Yeah,
because it's to hear that stuff soloed is just amazing. Anyway,
yeah. Oh, there you go. The Sunset Sound was a great place, man. I loved playing ball there and recording there.
Yeah.
A couple other people that you worked with, Adam Mant. So that actually, because of your first record, that wasn't too far of a stretch for you.
No. Adam was that was by far one of my favorite projects to do, because first of all, Adam is extremely talented.
Yeah.
He's extremely smart, on every level. He's just got instincts that just blew me away. But, but yeah, it was, we had the same manager.
Oh.
And my manager asked me if I was interested in doing something with Adam Ant. And I was like, yeah. And so, we sat down at, I don't know if you know, Hugo's.
Yeah, of course.
A restaurant. Yeah.
Yep.
We sat down at Hugo's and had lunch. And I swear that the time that I was sitting there, we were just talking because he's got, Andre, listen, we've got to do this. We've got to act, and the music has got to be, And by the time he got through, I had all the songs rolling around in my head. Manners and Physique, just musically, and Room at the Top. Well, actually, Room at the Top came later, but we did a song called Bruce Lee, which is we did it. We had so much fun. I mean, there were songs that aren't on the actual album, like Bruce Lee, which is an amazing, amazing, amazing song. We did a cover of Let It Whip, I think the Daz Band or something like that.
Right.
We just had a blast, and the recording the album was just a blast. I mean, just comical, because it's like, him and Marco, his guitar player, were hilarious. I mean, they kept me laughing, and that, and the engineer, the guy whose studio we were working at, was a guy named Frank Santacola, and his father, Henry Santacola, was called Old Henry's. And his father was Frank Santacola, who managed Frank Sinatra. Oh. So it was just fun. And Hank was he was an interesting guy, because he was, he wanted to be, he wanted to be involved, because he and I got along really, really well, and we hit it off. And so he wanted to be, every time I'd bring a project in, he would want to be sort of involved. And Adam was very much kind of not wanting anybody to really be in his space.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting dynamic, so yeah.
You left the music business for a minute, didn't you?
Not really. I mean, I left, as I guess, a working artist, because I think I was blackballed or something.
Really?
So I really,
Why would you be blackballed? Yeah. For what?
That's a really good question. I just found out from a lot of different people that, man, I heard you were blackballed.
I felt this.
And every time
I felt the same way, but we'll talk offline about that, man.
Hey, listen.
I want to ask you some questions. Woo, really? I had no idea, man.
Nothing was surprising, because I was trying to do a lot of different things, and it seemed like, things that should have been easy and no brainers kept being things that seemed to be obstacles for some really bizarre reason. And I can think of a number of reasons why I probably could have, because I'm a very, a brash, person when it comes to wanting to do things a certain way. And I'm like, look, I'm a hustler. So I'm gonna figure out how to do stuff. And so I opened a recording studio, ran a recording studio, and that's basically what I was doing. So I wound up, I had people coming in from all over the place recording in my studio. And what I would do is for young artists, I would give them free studio time. And a lot of people came through and got a chance to, get started and get their whole thing jumping off in their studio. So, yeah.
I had no idea that you did that, man. That's crazy. You studied screenwriting, didn't you, in LA? We're going to break away for a second here so I can tell you about a couple really important items. Number one, we have a brand new highlights page on YouTube. We want you to check it out. It's especially made by our intern, Jake Miller, for people who don't have quite enough time to sit through the entire video podcast. It's a great way to catch up on some great tidbits of information from all of our guests. You're going to have to search for it, I'm afraid, just simply because we need more subscribers on there in order for us to get a custom URL. But it's Music on the Run Highlights. You know what else is on there, you guys? A brand new feature that we've been doing strictly on Fridays. It's called Funk Friday. Got to have a little funk for your weekend. We feature great musicians, some former guests, some future guests,
and it's a little 1 to 2 minute vignette of us jamming and funking out. And it's a great way to kick off your weekend. It's called Funk Fridays, every Friday. Check it out. It's on the Music on the Run highlights reel. And of course, you'll find it on Facebook and Instagram as well. All right, let's get back to the interview.
You studied screenwriting, didn't you, in LA?
Yeah, I during that period of time, because I've always wanted to make movies. And, ever since I was a kid, one of the things that I loved even more than music was films. And that was like, that was as big, if not a larger passion of mine than music. And so I literally studied before I actually finally took the plunge and went to school. And I went to UCLA for, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years. But took workshops and every other kind of thing and studied from Dove Simmons, which is, a guru in the film business. I took production workshops, and then I literally not only, studied, but I also taught at UCLA. So, I got involved in filmmaking, and I found out that, screenwriting, the art of screenwriting is very similar to writing songs, except, writing songs to me always, was an interesting thing, because you have to come up with a whole story in like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to try to tell a story, and then, and then you have to repeat that whole, the premise of the story and the hook. Right. And you repeat that, 2, 3, 4 times, whatever. And so that's the concept. But in music and movies, you get to expand on the theme, whatever your theme is. And I found that it was like, it was easy for me. So I've written like 18 screenplays and just tons and tons of treatments and storylines and on and on and on.
Have you had the opportunity to have one of those movies made?
I've had the opportunity to have 3 of them made, and because I'm the way that I am, none of them got made because I didn't want to compromise, because I think, the art of getting something done is the art of giving somebody else the credit, and in filmmaking, if you're willing to give somebody else, the credit for the story, then you get to have your film made, or they get to take it and change it.
The entertainment
and make
business, brother.
Yeah. And for me, again, it's hard for me to do that. I mean, I get it now. And so it's a little bit different. But yeah, no, I wrote a thing, a film that I wanted, that I was trying to do for Jody back in the day.
Yeah.
It was kind of a gangster film. And it wound up getting, parts of it getting, used for somebody else's film.
Oh,
let's
really?
put it that way. Yeah. And then I did another film that they wanted Fred Williamson to star in. Fred Williamson is from, a lot of blaxploitation. He was a football player back in the day, but he came to fame in movies like Black Caesar and a lot of black exploitation films. And but he was interested in doing this film that I had written. But again, they wanted to change it, and I usually come from a very hardcore standpoint, and some of the sensibilities to me are what make stories they give them the depth that I think that they deserve. And the first thing people usually want to do is take that depth out and water it down. And I'm like, well, that's a different story. Yeah. And it's like, it's like music. It's like somebody coming in and saying, well, you can't, why should you make rock and roll? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I mean, I think Chuck Berry and Little Richard might have something to say about, why I should be able to make rock and roll if I want to,
right.
But they're saying, well, why can't you just do what Prince did, or what, Teddy Riley's doing, or what Bobby Brown is doing.
There are little boxes everywhere, aren't there?
I don't know. Yeah. Yep. And I'm like, last I checked, I can do whatever I want. And you don't have to release it. And so they didn't.
Wow.
And so there you go. Yeah.
But I think that's cool that you didn't compromise.
Yeah, no, I'm not good at compromise. I didn't get that chip. I didn't stand in that line.
That didn't come with from the factory.
Didn't come with the factory.
Has no upgrade for that.
None. Zero.
Okay. Hey man, let's switch gears a little bit. Music on the Run is the reason I came up with this is because I wanted to talk to people like you about how they stay in shape on the road or when they're busy all the time in the studio or whatever the case may be. Dude, you've been skinny and in shape for as long as I can remember. How do you do that?
You know, I believe that you should never stop doing what you ever did. You know, and I think as soon as you do that, then you start to go on to that other side. And so, you know, I still ride bikes. I still play basketball. Mm-hmm. I'm still as active as I ever was. And in fact, I stepped it up for a while. I mean, I have to say during this pandemic, I've been a lot less active as I was, but you know, I would do P90X.
Oh, no way. I did that too. I love that.
Yeah, no.
Tony, come on, Tony.
Yeah, Tony. Yeah,
Tony will kick your butt. Man.
Yeah. Tony was kicking my butt. I still, you know, I'm taking well, you know what? Now I do core de force, which is a little more lightweight. And because because Tony is like basically an hour.
Yeah, it is.
But core de force is core de force is like MMA speed is more like 27 minutes, 30 minutes. And so it's a little, you know, so that works. And you just pop on a video and you either box to it but now I'm getting a little bit more serious into it. And, you know, I'm about to get back into training because I literally go into training, you know, like I train myself. I go into it, I take it really serious and I get back into, and I've never really been, prone to a bad diet, you know, so my diet has always been pretty stable, you know, in terms of, what I eat. I mean, I got into, what was it? For a while, what was it? Now I can't even remember. It was, there was a diet guru for a while that I got into. Atkins, thank you.
I did that one.
All
meat all the time, ladies and gentlemen. Atkins.
Yeah, no bread, all meat, you know, and you could have basically. So, you know, I mean, I still, you know, once I got into that, but then I studied what the concept was. And so I was able to manage sort of the concept of what the Atkins diet was all about. And so, you know, I mean, so I've just sort of lived in that sort of realm, and that keeps me pretty fit.
Does working out, do you think that helps your creativity?
Probably. I mean, not for me. I mean, because, you know, I got to tell you, yeah, I mean, creativity is, you know, I'm blessed because I never run out of inspiration.
I hate you.
Creativity. Well, I mean, really, I guess, you know, especially now, with what's going on, but really throughout my whole life, you know, just as a Black man growing up in North Minneapolis, you know, there's so many things that you have to be inspired to or inspired by, whether you want to or not. You know, everything from, you know, I mean, I'd have to start by saying though, you know, I mean, me originally, growing up in the projects, which is an interesting thing, I never thought about race.
Yeah.
I never thought about, you know, a differentiality of anything, because in that context, everybody was around. And so I just grew up in an environment, you know, in the beginning, from 0 to, I don't know, maybe about 10, where it was just, you know, my world was a beautiful thing. I mean, you know, I thought, you know, John Wayne and Elvis and you know, Gilligan's Island and all of that kind of stuff. Mel Jazz Matinee Movie.
That was,
yeah. Roundhouse Rodney.
Captain.
What's his name?
Captain.
Mr. Green. Captain Kangaroo. Mr.
Captain
Green
Kangaroo,
Jeans.
thank you. I was spacing that one.
I mean, I was like, all of that stuff was my world. And then I didn't realize that anything was amiss, until Kennedy was assassinated, and then Martin Luther King was assassinated, and then riots began to happen. And then, and then my family members were affected. And then I started to go, oh, wait, there's this other reality. And then when we moved, because we moved into an all-Black neighborhood, and then I started looking at the world from a completely different standpoint. And so then inspiration started to become drawn from, different channels, some some dark channels, some different, you started to realize that, the world was not the way my parents allowed me to exist and to look at it from, they really, I think, went out of their way to try to just, give us a very sort of, positive perspective.
Perfectly segues into what I wanted to talk to you about. You're also an activist, and man, we've had some hellacious stuff going on, not only in Minneapolis, but all over the world, and for a very long time. Let me start out by asking you, how has Minneapolis changed from the time you were growing up to what we're seeing now?
Paul, I got to tell you, man, it's, it was bad in the 60s, just from the standpoint of a Black perspective.
Yeah.
But it was better then than it is now, if you can believe that. Because I think everybody was on the page of fighting for civil rights and fighting for upward mobility and fighting for equality and fighting for, fighting for the right to experience the same, American dream, the same opportunities as everybody else. Granted, obviously, that, the cultural control had a 400-year head start,
Yeah.
And so, from that standpoint, we were trying to, assimilate, catch up, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So, but Minneapolis changing, I think, it used to be full of opportunities, but if you think about that time period, it was such a transformational time period because, you had integration in schools, and so with that integration and the passing of civil rights and having to integrate schools and all that, what you had was, a systematic change was going as those things passed, and those positive things that you saw on the surface passed. There was other things going on underneath. So you'd see, okay, yeah, now Black people get to vote, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. We get to participate in the systems that control, our lives and our world and the communities around us, if we understand that and if we participate. But behind the scenes, they were taking away funding for the schools that Black people were living in, because they took all the white folks, bust them out of those schools and out of those communities. And once they bust them out, they systematically started taking the money, the funding from those schools and started shutting down those community centers. Like, all the things that, Prince and myself and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Morris, all those things that we were able to take advantage of and create music and create bands and do all that kind of stuff. It's because there were music programs. Right. That's because there were community centers. That's because there was the Way, and there was the Boys Club and the YWCA and the YMCA and all of that. Well, once they, things changed, they started, once, it was no longer integrated, and the money that was there, they just took it out. And then he took the community centers out. And in terms of the Way, which was one of the main community centers that gave us a lot of opportunity. Not only did they take that out, tear it down, but they built a police station in its place. And and that police station became, where it was replaced the community center, which completely changed that dynamic.
Yeah.
Which turned that community, that vibrant community, which is the community that we came from, they turned that vibrant community into basically a police community. Because now, the police were there, and they all of a sudden, before then, the biggest thing you had to worry about was maybe, this brother over here who sold a little bit of weed.
Right.
All of a sudden, once the police moved in, now there was like cocaine, there was like crack, there was like there was guns everywhere. That didn't exist before that police station got put there. So, I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but all I know is that dynamic changed. And then, where the McDonald's used to be, where everybody used to hang out, across the street from there, they built a funeral home. and so that vibrant community went from police and funeral, or from community center and bands and festivals to police and funeral. So that was gone. Music programs gone. The art programs in the schools, got, shrank, and the funding that went to those programs now is going to the police departments. And, so they get to have the tanks and and the same kind of weaponry that they have, in Desert Storm and wherever else. So, I mean, it's just sad. And I think at this point, what needs to happen, because if you really scrape away, read the reality, and you talk about what Black folks are actually doing. And I think Doc Rivers said it the other day perfectly. Black people are now the hunted, and they're hunted by police. And people are basically, the hunters are crying fear, when Black people are the ones being hunted. It's not like Black people are going into communities and shooting white folks and, doing anything. The thing about Black people that people don't seem to understand is if you leave them alone and give them an opportunity, give them a sense of pride, give them equal opportunity, a job, and the pride to be able to feed their family, they ain't got no beef.
Right.
And if you go back again, like I was talking about the 60s, you go back then, because that's all they wanted. But what happened is they made it so that, programs that you could move into a Black community, you could move in and you could get, $300, $400 apartment or duplex.
Yep.
But you couldn't be married. You had to have kids, but you couldn't be married, which means you can't have a husband. Yeah, no, this is how they created the Black community, and so you had to be a single woman, and they would give women jobs, but they wouldn't give men jobs. So it was like, and this was a program that was designed specifically to break up the Black family unit, to break up that, and it was successful. And so now fast forward, and people say, well, how come, all these, there's no men in the home. This is by design, and this is not a conspiracy theory. It is what happened. And so now we're having to, deal with the repercussions of that reality.
Wow. And
so, when I think about how the community that I grew up in has changed, that's exactly how it's changed. It's just programs have been implemented to entice people to adhere to a cultural disadvantage that they just didn't even realize that they were signing up to until it was too late.
Right.
Because when you think about, and I look at it like this, I think when somebody has a 400-year head start, and they get to basically sort of, that's a 400-year head start on education. That's a 400-year start on economical, wealth building. That's social, homes. Yep. That's a head start on everything. And so, and not only is all of that, a reality, but it's also, then they get to set the table for everybody else. So, And so when you finally get a seat at the table, you get a seat at the table, but your meal is tainted, and you don't get to enjoy the buffet because that's not on the menu, and you don't, and so now, and what's beautiful now, which I think I have to say is that I think a lot of people are recognizing how unfair it's been.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about Black people. I'm talking about white people. Everybody across the board are recognizing. That's why the beauty of what's been going on, in these riots and the revolution is that it's not just Black people. It's just not Black Lives Matter. It's everybody is saying Black Lives Matter and saying, you know what? This whole reality of police brutality and inequality and systemic racism, it's not been, people have been saying that, oh, Black people are just tripping. Now they're realizing, no, Black people haven't been tripping.
Right.
It is what it is. And now we all have to deal with it.
Yeah, the reality of it is just...
it's like... Yeah, it's like people acting like it wasn't going to come with a price tag. Oppression in and of itself is always going to come with a price tag.
Yeah.
And it's just how big a price tag it's going to be is going to depend on, people deciding, and people of good conscience deciding that they're going to get involved in stopping this travesty, because what's going on, is really, it's, when you really break it down, to really understand what's going on underneath. Again, it's another, hey, look over here, but don't look at what's, look over here, but don't look what's really going down. Look up and you can't see what's going down is how it goes.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think, it's happening again, where they're waving this shiny object, but they don't want you to see that, again, they're privatizing schools.
Yep.
And so it's becoming more segregated than even in the 60s now. It's worse. And, they're closing down the post office, which is one of the main reasons why certain folks actually get jobs that they can feed their families. They're trying to privatize that. And once that's privatized, then they are not, they don't have to adhere to, rules, that apply from a government entity. So that means that they can discriminate. And they're, and obviously, judges, if you can get judges that'll go along with a program to solidify laws that make it legal to discriminate, which is around the corner.
Yep.
Then now you've got, you're subject to somebody's whim if they want to hire you or not, and they can decide who they want to hire and who they don't want to, who they want in their workplace and what they look like, or not.
Right.
So what you create is the atmosphere of, zero opportunity, and about the music business. I mean, it just goes, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
To the point where opportunities have shrank to the point of
hopelessness.
Of hopelessness. And when you get hopelessness, you're going to get desperation. When you get desperation, you're going to get crime.
Yep.
And, and it's going to get ugly if we don't really stand up. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm speaking out and doing the things that I can try to do and try to give voice to and try to, get people who understand, who want to see a world that's not going in the direction that it's going in. And I think that it's important, to use your platform, to use my platform, to, you're seeing the NBA finally, standing up and saying, we're not, we have a platform and we're all in this world together. And, and I think people of good conscience have to ask themselves, what kind of world do you want to live in?
Right.
It's a simple question.
What kind of world do you want your children and your children's children to live in?
Yeah.
And we don't want to leave this a mess for them. We want to set the example. And I don't think we're doing a very good job right now.
No, we're
so
not. And
I do want to ask you this because it's difficult, and we got to have these difficult conversations because that's how we grow. And that's how we get through this. But in your opinion, how can white people be better advocates for the Black community or people of color? Which I don't love that term, but How can we be better advocates?
You know,
Because we
it is
don't
sad
know
that
sometimes.
Yeah, no, it is sad that we have to even, go into the people of color
I know,
and go
right?
into that, but it is what it is. And I guess the way to be a better advocate is to, first of all, recognize that there has been a 400-year head start, and to recognize what, other cultures, in my particular case, what Black culture has had to endure through history. Now, I mean, it's ugly. It is. It's, slavery. I don't like to get into to history and slavery and all that kind of stuff. But you have to, but we're at a point now where we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
We have to deal with the fact that Black people used to get hung. Black people were not allowed to be able to, vote. They used to, parade us out at state fairs and throw things at babies, as entertainment. At little Black babies, they would throw, hit the Black baby in the forehead. It's like, I mean, it's just, it's
unfathomable,
insane.
Man.
It really is. But this happened. And so I think the first thing, it really is. It's unbelievable. The first thing you have to do is, and you hate to have to even go there, because I thought we had gone past that, and I thought we'd be able to move on. But because of the state that we're in and the politics that we're in right now, it's bringing back all of these old, realities that we're having to readdress. And whether we like it or not, we have to deal with it. And so now that's where we're at. So, I mean, what can white people do is they can get involved. They can really understand what Black people have gone through, just education wise. Why, understand why is it that, Black people feel the way that they do? Why are they so frustrated? They think that Black people are angry. Black people aren't angry, but they've just tried to assimilate and to find the love, I guess, that they thought that they could get if they assimilated and did all the right things.
Mm-hmm.
And you do all the right things, and still you don't get a seat at the table.
Right.
If you do get a seat at the table, like I said, you can sit at the table, but you can't go over there at the buffet. You can't go to the bar.
You got a
you
different menu.
You got a different menu. Exactly. And your menu is tainted. So,
right.
So, I mean,
not funny,
I think if you look at it, but the thing is, if you look at it from that standpoint, then you start to understand what the plight of a Black man is and why they're coming from the places they're coming from. And once you understand something, then you know what you need to do. Then it's up to you whether you're a person of good conscience, good faith,
right,
and who you believe in as your guiding force is going to guide you to do the right thing.
Right.
Because I think part of that is the problem is that people think people always say Black people tear up their own community when they riot and all that other kind of stuff, and how could they do that? But again, when you step back and you think about it from a Black perspective, the Black community is only the community that you were forced to live into because there was a redlining and all the other kind of stuff.
Right.
And so there's never anything new in a Black community. There's never anything built for you. It's like hand-me-downs. A hand-me-down building here is what you get to put this in. A hand-me-down building there is what you get to put that in. Everything is like second-class citizen, and you're lucky if you had, maybe something built for you in your community. Lucky. So that's what you're working from. Nothing is ever for you. It's something given to you, and when you step back and you think, wait a second, Black people contribute on every level.
Right.
They pay taxes. You got, some of the most highest paid athletes on the planet, that are given, money in the communities all over the place, and not to mention, Blacks contributing to our life, air conditioners invented by Blacks,
right,
heart surgery invented by Blacks, rock and roll, jazz, blues, I mean, funk, you name it, the banjo, peanut butter, lawnmower, it's like, I mean, what more,
right,
can you ask a culture to contribute, especially a culture that was brought, here against their will and had to assimilate and came and made it a contribution. So, what white folks can do is just understand the plight of Black folks and say, you know what, we can no longer stand, and that's what brave people do. They say, you know what, because people that aren't afraid to compete, because it should be about the content of your character, not the color of your skin. It should be about the content of somebody's character.
Yeah.
And so, you're a bad motherfucker,
right,
on every instrument, period. You
either are or you ain't.
Yeah, and I think I'm a bad motherfucker on every. And guess what? We exist.
Yes.
You've been in a band, I'm in a band. You make music, I make music.
Right.
And we've been in a band together. And so, if we could be an example of how people coexist without threat. I'm not threatened by you, and I'm sure you're not threatened by me.
Right.
Who gives this shit?
Right.
I mean, in fact, I come and, if I'm anywhere you're playing, I'm coming to your gig. And if I'm anywhere playing, I hope, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And so, but that's what it should be on a microcosmic level. That's what it should be about.
I think that the musical community, in my opinion, has done an exceptional job of what you just described. If we could somehow show that to the world and they picked up on how we've always acted naturally, it would be incredible. Of course, that I've made my living off of Black music. I know that. Mm-hmm. You know that. I respect that like crazy. My entire family has. I mean, we genuinely love Black music, the culture, everything, because we feel it so deeply, and it's just we're passionate about it. So, but it's an unsaid thing, and maybe it's got to become a said thing. I've never explained that before, and it's maybe time to explain things like that, the respect level, and giving credit where credit is due.
Yeah,
That's
one of the things that I always respected about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones.
Right.
Because they always gave credit to the people that they
sure did.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and still do. And that means a lot. It really does. And obviously they're from London, they're from England.
Yeah.
But they give credit to where credit is due. Right. And I think it's important. But again, when you use us, you, me, Prince, anybody from Minneapolis as sort of an example, it's like, you were involved in a group Prince put together.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing. Prince got his record deal from Owen Husney. White guy, Jewish.
Yep.
That's how, you can say that he would have made it with or what, but that's not the point.
That's not the story either.
That's not the story either. Owen did what he had to do. That's why I always give Owen a lot of credit because, Owens is the one who put us on, and as far as that's concerned,
right.
It's up to us to do whatever music we do and take it wherever we take it. But again, if you use that as an example, that's people coming from different places, different experiences, different backgrounds, coming for a common goal, and that's helping each other out. You get compensated. Yeah, you get money. Yeah, whatever. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, you get to live your dream. Yep. I get to live my dream.
Yep.
Everybody gets to realize their American dream, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's what it should be all about.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's way too logical. All right, I'm going to switch. By the way, I just want to say thank you for sharing your perspective and always using your art to educate. Just go look at Andre's catalog. He's got so many different songs about what's going on the streets and what's happening in people's lives and in the news. We don't have time to talk about it now. I want to switch gears, though, but please go check his stuff out. We have some fan questions for you real quick. Mm-hmm. Miles Matisse says, when is your Return to Funk record coming out?
Miles, I am done with it. Oddly enough, I'm finished. I was going to release it over the summer. I wanted to release it on my birthday, June 27th, but the pandemic happened, and because it's such a, I wanted to get away from all the heaviness that I had been into, with Black Man in America and Black Lives Matter and all the stuff that was on that last album. I wanted to get into I went back to my roots, on this funk thing, because I've never done a funk album for myself. I did the experimental stuff, space, new wave and all that kind of stuff, but I did it for other people, but I never did it for myself. So this is the first time that I was doing a funk album for myself.
Right.
And it's funky, but it's not, it's about, just everyday subject matter. It's not about anything heavy.
Right.
And because we're in the climate we're in, it just seems like it's not quite appropriate to release it right now, because, I'm in the midst of writing some heavy stuff even now. There's a couple of things that I'm doing, and I want to try to pull some folks together, from our musical community, and see if I can do a thing with everybody all together, because I think we should make a statement, with what's going on in Minneapolis. I think we should make a statement just as a collective, musical, force, because everybody's, just like we're having this here, this podcast and talking, it's like, it's a conversation we need to have, but we need to have it musically. And
True.
So I've written something that I really want to bring a lot of folks in and really kind of, try to make a statement, because I think it's important to do that. And
if there's anything the Peterson family can do, I'm volunteering everybody.
You got it like that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know what? Everybody. It's called All Hands on Deck. So, So.
Got one more question for you. Audrey Johnson says, are you mentoring any young musicians? If so, what's their specialty, and what level of support are you able to offer them?
I used to try to mentor, young folks. I still have a hard time getting past the fact that, I'm on the other side of young folks, but you can probably relate to this, because when you're the youngest, it's
always
something
think
that's
you're the youngest.
Yeah, you always you kind of keep that sort of mentality. Mm-hmm. So, but I find it difficult to mentor young folks, because I empathize, sympathize, and all that stuff with where they're coming from, with their energy and their need to want to do things a certain kind of way. And then they get caught up on that whole, this way is how you did it in your day and my day. And, and the reality is, it's not a my day, your day thing. It's either right or wrong, and so I can't it's hard for me to get caught up in that, because it's not it's like, I came up with a concept a long time ago called strip. You take away everything, what's important, and so based on that concept, nothing, everything is man-made, so it's like, there is no, this whole trying to create this, my day, your day thing. No, it's just a state of mind, it's just whatever your state of mind is. If you can get into a state of mind of, what this teenager might be into, or what this older person might be into, that's a state of mind.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so it's hard sometimes to wrestle with that conversation with younger folks, that, and I try to go there and I try to get them to understand, but sometimes they want to do what they want to do. And I'm the biggest advocate for do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But if you're coming to me, I'm going to say you should probably do this, 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 and this if you want to get that.
Right.
And I'm only speaking because I've been down that road. I've been involved in a lot of successful situations, and I've seen how people do the right thing, and I've seen how people do the wrong thing.
Right.
And so now I get it. It's not rocket science. It's really kind of, pretty simple.
We were in a band together called the Mighty Soulmates, and actually, back in the mid '90s, and we never put the record out. And the record is actually, do you even know if it's released yet? I'm a little in the dark on this one.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be released. I'm not, actually I'm a little bit in the dark as well. I know it's supposed to be released. I think either Mick or Gardner sent me the release date. But there's been so much stuff going on.
We got that to look forward to, man. I mean, I look back at that time so with so fun. It was such a great
fun.
period of time,
Yeah.
man. And hanging with you and getting to know you and making music with you. And it was really, wait till you see the cover art, man. My long blonde hair down to here. Remember that?
Yeah, no, I mean, and it was cool because, I mean, I was so laid back, way more laid back than I normally am. But, I mean, that was at a point, we did that at a point where I was happy to take a back seat because I was like, I was coming off of all kind of hit records and to be in a group where I didn't have to, be in charge of everything. Yeah. I could just be like, that was beautiful for me. I'm like, hey, and to let Mick or you or Gardner just sort of, run what y'all was doing. Was it Ball of Confusion?
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a blast.
That was so cool.
Tidy a Rocket was a blast.
What? Yeah. So that's Mick Murphy from The System. Gardner Cole, who was signed to Warner Brothers and wrote a lot of hit records for Madonna, you and me.
Yeah.
And that's coming up. So what's next for you? I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to find out what's next for you and where can people find out information about you?
Well, what's next is tomorrow. Well, I'm not sure when this is airing, but
airs September 8th, so you already did it.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well,
you were great, by the way. But tell us about it, though.
The State Fair, which is coming up. Let's see. Really, what I'm doing right now is I'm gonna release a succession of songs, just random. Because I think that, I want to put statements out into the world about what's going on. And so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to try to accompany those with really dynamic visuals. But I'm also working on, I don't know if you're aware, but I do for the last, I think 3 or 4 voting cycles, I've done a song called Vote to get out the vote.
Yep.
And so I'm going to try to put together a even larger, push for that this time and really try to get folks out to get involved in the voting process. So, I'm working on the song, working on the music, and I'm going to work on the visuals and really kind of get that out. So that's what I'm working on right now. So
you're on social media. Mm-hmm. Do you have a website or anything that we can put up there for them? Okay.
AndreCymone.bandcamp.com. That's one.
Okay.
And then AndreCymone.com is where the website is, and and some of I'm in the process of consolidating all my presence, my web presence, my social media presence, to so that it's easier to access, and you know that it's all coming from me. Because the thing is, you find a lot of people just decide, oh, they're gonna do some sort of an offshoot. So I got a lot of people with a lot of stuff. So I'm trying to shut all of those, shut those down and just, make it so that people can, it's easier to access the things that I'm getting involved in because, and I like that t-shirt you got on, man. I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Marcus Miller.
He was missing in that thing we did, that
I know
that webinar we did.
I just watched another one today that had, so many people that were talking about the evolution of the 5 and 6 string bass. So Jimmy Haslip was on there, Anthony Jackson, Ron Carter was in there, of course, Victor Wooten and Steve Bailey. Yeah. There must have been 25 bass players in it that I watched right before we started doing our taping. But it was amazing to do that webinar for Berkeley with you. And I'm glad you said yes, man. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no, and thanks for inviting me. That was really cool.
Andre, man, I got to tell you, it is such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for saying yes. And it's good to reconnect with you, man. And we got to do more of this. And
we got to do more.
Hopefully play some music in this century together.
That's what we're going to do. No, that's what we got to do. We got to get together and get some music out there.
I'd love to do that. Andre Cymone, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. That's it, man. That's episode 21 of Music on the Run with Andre Cymone. Woo! We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot. Music on the Run was hosted by yours truly, St. Paul Peterson. Edited and produced by my buddy Davide Raso. Video editing by Ivan Sebastianov. And a very special thanks to the people who financially support this podcast.
And remember, give credit where credit is due.